Bombshell after bombshell during the testimony of David Pecker in the criminal trial against Donald Trump in Manhattan. Karen, I thought this was going to be explosive, but this exceeded my expectations, and I've really never seen a witness in all of the years I've practiced, frankly, as powerful, as credible, as appealing to this jury as David Pecker. Completely exceeded my expectations. Just for everybody joining, every day we keep a scorecard of everything that went down on each day. Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, and I do a summary every morning of what to expect. Then in the afternoon, we do a summary of everything that went down in each day of this trial. I'm a visual learner, so I like to see things on these scorecards, and you can collect them all. You could go back and watch each of these broadcasts that we've done, and you could keep all of these to remind yourself of what happened in the previous day. There's trial 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4, there's 5, there's 6, and here we are on day 7 after court was dark on Wednesday. No trial yesterday and trial today. Let's just take a look at everything that's went down, and then I'm going to toss it over to you, Karen, for your analysis of everything that happened today. And as a programming note, I want to remind everybody that after Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, and I finish, I will then be hosting Political Beatdown with Michael Cohen after this. So after Karen and I are done, you'll be actually brought to the live with Michael Cohen and I. Trump trial day 7. Let's pull up the scorecard. The day began with the prosecution introducing a new contempt motion against Donald Trump for violations of the gag order. As of this moment, when we are live, Justice Merchan has not yet ruled on the other potential gag order violations and the first motion for contempt, although if we get news about Justice Merchan's ruling, which frankly could happen at any moment, that's why Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, and I started this about 10 minutes after 4 Eastern, 1 Pacific, so that we could kind of time this with the conclusion of the proceedings before we go to Political Beatdown. Political Beatdown will start a little bit later today than usual, as soon as Karen and I are done. So the new contempt motion relates to statements that Donald Trump made after the first application for contempt, including statements that we broke the news here on the Midas Touch Network, where Donald Trump said it was a very unfair jury. 95% Democrat, Donald Trump said, and that's subject to this next application for contempt. Then the direct exam of David Pecker completed. Pecker testified how he was doing what he was doing specifically to help the campaign with a catch and kill scheme. He testified that Trump said that he would take care of Cohen. That was a little bit of a typo I gave Salty there. Trump said he'd take care of Cohen. Also, Trump held a thank you dinner for David Pecker and continually thanked Pecker for taking care of the situation about the doorman and the girl, which David Pecker understood to be the individuals whose stories he bought and killed for Donald Trump. So Trump was intimately aware of all of the steps and actions that Pecker was taking. Pecker also corroborating, as I stated above, what Michael Cohen is likely going to testify to, that Donald Trump had taken care of Pecker, and Trump, according to Pecker, said that he was going to take care of Cohen. Trump intimated, well, Cohen's independently wealthy outside of me. He's got medallions. He's got his taxi cab business. He's got his money. Don't worry, I'm going to take care of Cohen for what he did. And Pecker was in the room when Donald Trump said that. I thought that was a bombshell. We also learned from David Pecker that Sarah Huckabee Sanders, when she was working in the press office, along with Hope Hicks, while they were in the White House, were involved in efforts to try to cover up the scheme to kill and bury these stories in connection with the 2016 campaign. Just think about it. That's where our tax dollars were going There was also a part where I think Pecker was told not to worry about any criminal investigations because he said the attorney general was in the pocket of Donald Trump. Just go take a look at the list one more time and we'll finalize the things that happened. Then there was a cross exam of David Pecker. And one of the notable things is that Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's lawyer who got dressed down by the judge, who the judge said, "You are losing all credibility." He was the one who was leading all of Trump's trial team, and Blanche seems to be sidelined. He didn't speak at all, really, the entire day. So that's my summary of what went down. But let's turn it to the person of the hour, Karen Friedman Agnifilo, the former #2 at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. She has close to 30 years experience working at the Manhattan DA's office. Nobody in the country with more experience in this courtroom before Justice Merchan at the office of the DA than Karen Friedman Agnifilo. Karen, would love your insight.
So this was an incredible, incredible day. So much news was going on. I can't even believe it. I had a split screen of watching the updates from the trial because, as you know, the trial is not broadcast anywhere. So we have to rely on people who are in the courtroom who are essentially live tweeting, whether it's Adam Klasfeld or CNN, whatever it is. They have these running analysis and scripts of what's being said because we can't hear it or see it. But at the same time, literal split screen, as I'm reading this stuff to keep up with the case, is the Supreme Court argument on presidential immunity and listening to that in detail. And that was so intense to think how important that case is. It was so important that that oral argument was broadcast live on many, many networks, including the Midas Touch network, because it is essential and foundational to our democracy. And it all involves Donald Trump, of course. And the third thing that was happening at the exact same time is the New York Court of Appeals, the highest court, overturned the Harvey Weinstein conviction here in New York that was prosecuted by my old office. Devastating, devastating result. You might wonder why I'm bringing that up today. What does it have to do with Donald Trump? Well, it might, and I'll explain in just a minute. But this was a case that was a conviction that Harvey Weinstein was convicted of sexually assaulting 3 women in New York. And the reason it was reversed, it was a 4-3 reversal. So it was a very close call. The reason it was reversed was because the Court of Appeals said that the judge erred in allowing in the Molyneux evidence that they allowed in of prior sexual assaults to go towards the intent of Harvey Weinstein. And they said the judge made a mistake when they balanced the probative value with the prejudicial effect, that it was too prejudicial, and sent it back down to be retried. And the DA's office said they're going to retry that case. Now, there were 3 scathing dissents. I think it's a wrong ruling, and New York law is just really behind the times. But putting that aside, because it's our highest court, that is the law of the land. And the reason I say it could affect Donald Trump is, if you recall, there's a Molyneux decision in the Trump case, in this very case. So Juan Merchan, the judge, is going to have to look at this Harvey Weinstein decision that now sets up this new standard for Molyneux about what can come in and what can't, and look at his ruling in this particular case and determine whether he's still going to allow the civil judgments and the underlying facts of them that he already said can come in this particular case. So it's just a blockbuster day with a lot of information. So getting back to the trial at hand, David Pecker was on the stand for the entire day. That's all they really did today. It was not a short day. It was a full day. And they will be finishing. They actually just finished cross-examination for the day. They're nowhere near done with cross, but the judge is telling the jury that they're wrapping up for the day, dismissing them. And while we're broadcasting this live, for all we know, Ben, he's going going to rule on the order to show cause on the gag order. So we'll definitely keep our eye open for that. But let's talk about the highlights of the testimony today. So David Pecker testified, and a lot of us thought it was going to just be a background person to kind of tell the story of how all this worked, and kind of be the narrator of context and background information. Well, I don't know about you, but I was blown away by the substance of what he said today, and how incredibly powerful and important it is in terms of improving the guilt of Donald Trump beyond a reasonable doubt. It definitely got us a little bit closer, and I think if he holds up under cross, this is going to be extremely powerful. I'm taking out my notes because I take a lot of notes. So I can remember all the stuff that came out, because there was so much that I thought was so incredible. So one of the things that I thought was really, really powerful was around Karen McDougal, and they kind of picked up today on the Karen McDougal, the payout, right? The $150,000 to pay off the former Playboy playmate who Donald Trump had an almost year-long relationship with, who she was in love with him, or at least that's what the testimony, or what I believe she has said elsewhere. And there was this whole discussion about whether or not that she should be paid, and how that would work. And David Pecker said, look, Trump called David Pecker and asked him directly, what should I do? What should I do about her? And Pecker said, I think that you should pay her. This would be really bad and really embarrassing. And Michael Cohen told him the boss will take care of it. And so when David Pecker paid her on behalf of Donald Trump to buy her life rights, buy her story, so it wouldn't come out and embarrass Donald Trump, then what they were saying was he thought he was going to get paid back. If he had gotten paid back, it would not be a crime. It would not be an election violation. The reason it's an election violation when David Pecker pays these for these catch and kill stories is because it's considered an in-kind campaign donation, and you have to declare it. And he thought he was going to get paid back for it, so it wouldn't be an actual donation. It was a short loan, and so that's why why he didn't think he was committing a crime when he did the doorman and he did Karen McDougal. But he directly talked to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump and he were chatting about it and deciding what to do. And Michael Cohen was very much involved in that as well. He also said that there came a time when he knew that if you do catch and kill with a political candidate like Arnold Schwarzenegger, that came up. He said, look, that is when it becomes a crime. And so that's why he was reticent and did not want to do this when it came time to pay for these stories for a political candidate. As sleazy and as disgusting and as absolutely just frankly somewhat unethical the National Enquirer seems to be, given the testimony of David Pecker, the fact that they would the sleaze factor of what they engaged in is just really disturbing that this is where so many people get their news. But David Pecker was not willing. He had his standards. He wasn't going to pay off a porn star. He said, look, my readers wouldn't like that. I do a lot of business with Walmart. That's not going to fly if I'm involved with a porn star, number one. And number two, he wasn't willing to commit a crime. He did not want to cross that line. He certainly knew about it. So he wanted to get paid back. And so they discussed that he would that Pecker would hold the story, the McDougal story. That was what the agreement was, so that it would not impact the election, but he wanted to get paid back, right? This is what he was trying to do. And because he considered Trump a friend as well. He was this mutual relationship. He called him his mentor and someone who he admired and had a lot of affection for. But he knew but he wasn't willing to commit a crime for him. So he wanted to get paid back. And he said, look, paying off a catch and kill story on behalf of a campaign is illegal, and he's not going to report it. And he said that Michael Cohen said, don't worry, though, the boss will take care of it. You don't have to worry about it. Jeff Sessions after he won, he said, talked about how Jeff Sessions was in his pocket, the attorney general, and would take care of it. So I also thought that was very, very telling. He said that he spoke with Michael Cohen constantly on behalf of Donald Trump, and when they got to the Stormy Daniels part, it was made very clear to David Pecker that the boss, Donald Trump, would be very upset if it did not happen, if he did not pay her off, but again, David Pecker said, look, I'm not a piggy bank. You didn't pay me back for the first two. I'm not paying for the third. And I'm also not willing to commit a crime for him. So that there was a lot of back and forth about that. But I thought he came across extremely, extremely credible. So another couple of things that I thought were really powerful is every time Josh Steinglass, the prosecutor, would talk about something with David Pecker, he would corroborate it with text messages or other communications. And where he could do that, he did do it, and that there was a lot of corroboration there. At one point, there was a conversation between Dylan Howard, who is David Pecker's number two. He was part of this conspiracy, and there were texts that said, if Trump were to win, the favors won't hurt, and at least if he wins, I'll be pardoned for the election fraud. This is what Dylan Howard was saying to David Pecker. They knew exactly what they were doing when they engaged in this. So that's very powerful to show that this had nothing to do with Melania. This had everything to do with the campaign. David Pecker also did a really good job of bringing the jury back to what it was like in 2016 when Donald Trump was running, and how back then, I mean, now we're almost immune to all his scandals, right? It's almost like, oh, another thing he did. I mean, the guy does, he really wasn't kidding when he said I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and it really wouldn't matter. It's like we've become numb or immune to all his scandals and everything that's going on. But back then it wasn't like that yet. And when the Access Hollywood tape came out, it was extremely damaging. Everybody was concerned. And there were conversations between David Pecker and Hope Hicks, who was part of the campaign at the time, about the Access Hollywood tape. So it's very clear that that this was campaign related, because then it also became about Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. That was all going. Hope Hicks was on all these emails, and she was very much involved, and I expect she's going to testify to that as well. So in October of 2016 is when Stormy Daniels came forward. This is after they already had talked in August of 2016 and agreed to engage in these catch and kill stories. And that's when David Pecker came forward and said, look, I'm not doing the Stormy Daniels one. I did Karen McDougal. I did the doorman. I'm not paying her. And he said, look, you're going to have to handle this, Michael Cohen. AMI is not going to be associated with a porn star, and Trump will have to handle it himself. And so that's why David Pecker did not get involved in that. And at one point, Pecker said that he had a conversation with Trump, who said to him, he was very upset, and he didn't even say goodbye to him like he normally did. He called him up and was yelling at him about the Karen McDougal story, and said, I thought you had this under control. And because all these stories are starting to come up, and Pecker was starting to walk away from Trump, and Trump did not like this. And so it was tricky. And but he said, look, I wanted to help him. I wanted to help my friend, but I wasn't willing to cross certain lines, is certainly the subtext I got out of his testimony. And once he was elected, he redid this agreement with Karen McDougal so that she could talk about what happened between them, and Trump didn't like that either. So look, Pecker, again, he would help Trump, but he's not willing to throw everything away for him. He liked him and he admired him. And he also described Michael Cohen as, he told Trump, he said, Michael Cohen is someone who would throw himself in front of a bus for you. So I guess that's what his perception was. And he talked about talking to Michael Cohen a lot. And then, of course, there's the famous the dinner that he was invited to, that Trump invited to him at the White House, that said, "Bring your people. This is your dinner." It was a thank you dinner. And there was also a meeting at the White House that was, I think, surprising to people, that when David Pecker got to the White House, Trump was finishing up a meeting between Jim Comey and Reince Priebus and others, and called Pecker in and introduced him as a friend. And it was kind of surreal. And then, so they go through all the stories. They go through all the extremely damaging testimony that really shows that Donald Trump was intimately involved and that this was campaign related. He also mentioned that the concern for his family and Melania never came up. It just wasn't a discussion. It wasn't a thing, and never seemed to come up. And then I thought it was really powerful that in the end, Josh Steinglass ended with the underlying facts of his federal non-prosecution agreement and his cooperation agreement with the DA's office. After he went through all of this, he's going to take the sting out of that and he's not going to not show that, because that's on direct, you always try to take the sting out of anything negative that you think that the defense is going to bring up in cross. So he brought that out and said, look, you've gotten immunity for this. You were investigated federally for federal election crimes, and you were given immunity or a non-prosecution agreement, and also a cooperation agreement here as well. It was very clear that he committed crimes. He knew he committed crimes, and he admitted to it. So he read the factual statement on the record about his knowledge and the facts of committing a crime. Again, very powerful. And the subtle tech, the under subtext to the jury is, look, don't believe us. Even the federal government thought this was a crime. Like, this is definitely a crime. Now, they gave him immunity for it, but there was criminal activity going on. Then we get to hold on, I'm just looking at my notes. Then we get to the cross-examination of Pecker. And the thing about the cross-examination, it only just started. It's only been about a half hour, 45 minutes. I wouldn't be surprised if they're on the stand, if they have them on cross all day tomorrow or most of the day. Interestingly, the defense is starting to gel, right? They're not really walking away from the facts. They're not denying any of this. They're not denying that there was checkbook journalism, or that they did catch and kill, or that even there was these arrangements. What he's saying is, and what they're doing through the defense is, they're like, but this is what your business model was with lots of celebrities and other politicians, right? You did it with Arnold Schwarzenegger, you did it with Mark Wahlberg, you did it with whoever, and this is what you did. You did this for Trump for a long time. You did this for all sorts of celebrities. So this was, and you benefited from it, right? This was mutually beneficial for you. And so this was a business thing for you. It had nothing to do with the campaign. They're saying, yeah, all these things happened, but Pecker did this because this was good for Pecker's business, right? That he would buy these stories, and he could publish them or not publish them, depending, and maybe he would get stuff, get in the good graces of Trump, whoever, but that it had nothing to do with the campaign, that this was just what he did. And he said, look, you suppressed negative stories about Trump because it was good for your business, and you care about profit. And so it was. It's just interesting to me that they're not going to deny any of this. They're going to embrace the facts, but say it was a different reason. That can be a very effective form of cross-examination, because you're not really arguing or quibbling with things that you can't quibble with. I mean, obviously these things happened, many of them, and many of these things there are text messages or other corroboration. He's just going to say, look, this was David Pecker, this was his business model. This is what he did all the time. This is no different. And this had nothing to do with the campaign. He wasn't trying to donate to the campaign. And certainly Donald Trump didn't have any idea that he was committing a crime. He just thought he'll have him go do what he was doing for all these other people and all these other celebrities and politicians. That's just how his business model. So Trump certainly didn't have the corrupt intent it was no conspiracy to commit election fraud. This was just him doing what he normally does and taking advantage of an effective business model and just using it to his advantage as well. So that's going to be what their defense is. And if you remember, Ben, they're going to have to prove that Trump intended to either commit or conceal a crime. And then in order to do so, falsified business records. And I think that's what the prosecution's going to say is, look, if this was just a business model and you didn't care, then you shouldn't have, you paid for it and you used him to hide the money. And then you wanted to hide it too, because you didn't want to have to declare it, because campaign or corporations can't donate to campaigns, so you falsify business records. So the prosecution still has an extremely strong case, but at least we can see now what the defense is, and the defense only has to convince one person to get a hung jury. That's all they need. And so that's what their goal and what they're going to do is. Right now, what's happening is the prosecution is once again asking the judge to, or telling the judge that that there was more violations of the gag order.
And Karen, the breaking news update is that Justice Merchan has set a hearing, so we can see right here, for next Wednesday at 2:15 p.m. Eastern on the new application for contempt against Donald Trump based on the new violations of the gag order that were committed since the last gag order violation hearing. Justice Merchan signed the order to show cause. So the big question is, will we get a ruling from Justice Merchan? And we have not today on the pending contempt application for which there was already a hearing. In about 5 minutes, I'm going to go live with Michael Cohen on my show with him, Political Beatdown. But I do want to say this. Everything that Cohen had said before, and I know Cohen made a post recently that he's not going to be discussing really anything more about this case until until it's done or until he's finished testifying or whatever. But everything that Cohen had been saying, David Pecker today corroborated. I mean, by line, David Pecker basically said, I was here. Here are my conversations with Cohen. And look, yes, Cohen is a friend of mine, but he has been an accurate historian and prognosticator, and it has been corroborated by the documentation. And we're seeing that today again through a totally separate witness in David Pecker. I also want to give a hat tip to Adam Klasfeld, who does some just incredible reporting from the courthouse. And let me just take you through this, Karen, and it's exactly what you had in your notes, but let me paint this picture for everybody watching, right? As written by Klasfeld. So David Pecker says that Donald Trump told him, quote, I wanted to thank you for taking care of the McDougal situation. Then said something similar about him taking care of the doorman situation, right? It sounds like a mob boss. Asked by the prosecutor whether Trump's concern about the stories getting out was primarily about his family or the campaign, Pecker goes, I thought it was for the campaign. Question. After Mr. Trump announced his candidacy for the presidency, did he ever express concern to you for how Melania Trump would think of his affairs? Answer. No. You said he invited you to the inauguration. Answer. Yes. At that point, said Trump is looking exasperated. He's trying to sharply exhale in the courtroom before sitting down. Pecker's testimony continues. Question. Did there come a time when you visited the White House? Answer. Yes, I did. Pecker says, Trump invited me to the White House for dinner, describing it as a thank you dinner. Pecker says that Trump told him, quote, Bring your friends and business associates. It's your dinner, Pecker. Pecker took Trump up on the invitation, bringing along Howard and Rothstein. Quote, Jared Kushner was there. Sean Spicer was there. All of the people he brought were able to take a photo with Trump in the Oval Office. According to Pecker, Trump got angry after seeing Anderson Cooper interviewing McDougal. Trump said that he thought there was an agreement forbidding her from speaking to the press. Pecker replied, yes, we have an agreement, but I amended it to allow her to speak to the press. Pecker says Trump got mad and couldn't understand why Pecker amended the agreement. At some point, the FEC contacted Pecker about his activities with AMI. Pecker said that Michael Cohen tried to reassure him, quote, Jeff Sessions is the attorney general and Donald Trump has him in his pocket. But Pecker wasn't reassured. I am very worried. And then Pecker also testified to the following. Pecker described Michael Cohen complaining about not being reimbursed, yet, quote, Michael Cohen paid Stormy Daniels out of his own funds, which was the first time I heard of that. I wasn't involved in that transaction. But Pecker describes a conversation with Trump in Trump's office where Pecker says to Trump, quote, I said Michael Cohen is very concerned about his bonus for this year, and I wanted you to do that. He's very loyal. He said Cohen was working very hard. Quote, I believe that he would throw himself in front of a bus for you. Pecker then said that Donald Trump responded to him that Cohen had multiple apartments in his buildings and valuable taxi medallions. Quote, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it, Trump added, according to Pecker. Karen, we're about to wrap up. I got about 90 seconds, then I got to jump on with Michael Cohen. I want to give you the final word before I do that about today's proceedings. How would you sum it up?
Yeah, so just look, when you said FEC, it's the Federal Election Commission, and clearly he was upset that something's going to happen and that he could be prosecuted. That was a conversation about what are we going to do? They're breathing down my neck. There's these campaign violations, and being reassured that don't worry, Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, is in Trump's pocket. He can do whatever he wants. I mean, if that's not consciousness of guilt evidence, I don't know what is. So the case is just going in extremely well, extremely strong, and there is so much more evidence that I think people realized that show that this was about the campaign. This is about Donald Trump. And I think that to the extent that there are some people who have said, oh, this is just a hush money case. Why this case? This isn't a serious case. This is more serious than I think anyone realized. This is just as serious as any of the other cases, because this time he influenced the election and he actually won. So this is a really important case, and everybody stay tuned.
Every morning, Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, and I go live, and we will explain what you can expect each day. The Midas Touch Network is your #1 destination for all trial coverage of the Trump criminal trial. We go live twice a day on just updates relating to the trial. Once super early in the morning for super early for those on the West Coast like me. And then right after trial proceedings conclude, Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, and I will always go live. So check back in multiple times a day for our live coverage here on the Midas Touch Network. There's 22,000 people who are here live right now. Make sure you're subscribed to the Midas Touch YouTube channel. Make sure you're also subscribed to the Legal AF audio. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the Political Beatdown audio and, of course, the Midas Touch podcast. So without further ado, we're going to transfer this audience to the live coverage that I will be hosting with Michael Cohen. We'll be doing that in 30 seconds. You don't even have to go anywhere. It'll automatically transfer you. In the event it doesn't automatically transfer you, then you can just go to the YouTube feed and click Political Beatdown. It'll take me about 30 seconds to reset there with Michael Cohen and Karen Friedman, Agnifilo. It is such an honor to co-host these updates with you. As I've said before, there is no one in this country with more experience right now talking about what is going down than you. You worked at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office for nearly 30 years. You were the #2 at that office. and at times served even as the acting district attorney. Thank you for your brilliant coverage. It is truly an honor. Thank you, everybody, for watching. It's free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Karen and I will see you in the morning. Thank you so much for watching. Shout out to the Legal AFers. Shout out to the Midas Mighty.
Enough! Send him to the big house, not the White House. Get the new exclusive tees, mugs, and stickers right now at store.midastouch.com. That's store.midastouch.com.